That night, I drove my daughter to the airport for what I thought was just another work trip. Everything seemed normal until my 7-year-old grandson grabbed my hand tightly. His wide, panicked eyes froze me in place. With a trembling voice, he whispered, "Grandma, don't let us go back to the house. I heard Mama planning something against us this morning. Please believe me." In that instant, something inside me broke. Without asking any questions, I started the car and fled with him into the dark night. My name is Binham. I am 70 years old, and until that night, I thought I knew my daughter Candace like the back of my hand. I had lived with her and my grandson Devon ever since the death of my son-in-law Reggie 3 years ago. His car accident left deep scars on all of us, especially on little Devon, who had since become a quiet, observant child. That Thursday, we drove Candace to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport for a business trip to Chicago. She's a marketing manager at a big firm and travels often. We arrived early. The terminal was mostly empty, and the icy air conditioning made me pull my thin coat tighter. "It'll only be 3 days, Mama," Candace said with a smile, adjusting her carry-on bag. "Take good care of Devon, and don't forget his medication." Devon stood beside me, clutching his dinosaur backpack and staring at his mother with intense eyes. He's never been very talkative, but that night he was quieter than usual. "Everything will be fine, my love. We always make it work, don't we, Devon?" I tried to include him in the conversation, but he just nodded silently. Candace crouched down and brushed the hair from his eyes. "Be good for Grandma. Go on, Mama. I'll be back soon." She kissed him on the forehead, and he remained still, like a small statue. I watched my daughter with a swelling heart. Despite all the hardship, she had become a strong, independent woman. After losing her husband, she threw herself into work, maybe as a way to escape the pain. I admired her resilience, even if I'd noticed a growing emotional distance between us. "I have to go," she said, glancing at her watch. "Boarding starts in half an hour." We shared a brief hug, a mechanical embrace without much warmth. She kissed my cheek, picked up her bag, and walked toward the gate. We watched her until she disappeared into the crowd. "Let's go, Devon." "It's getting late," I said, taking his hand. We walked down the terminal corridor toward the parking garage. Devon stayed silent the whole way. His quietness didn't worry me. It was just his way. Since his father's accident, he'd spoken more through looks and gestures than words. The parking garage was dimly lit, only a few yellow lamps casting vague shadows on the concrete floor. Few cars were parked at this hour. I pressed the alarm button, and the lights of our old Chevy Impala blinked. I started walking toward the car, gently pulling Devon by the hand. That's when I felt it. A sudden, strong tug. Devon had stopped abruptly and was gripping my wrist so tightly. His small fingernails left marks on my skin. I turned, confused. "What is it, sweetie?" I asked, bending to his level. His face was pale under the yellowish light. His eyes, always watchful, were now wide with pure terror. I had never seen such fear in him before. A chill ran down my spine. "Grandma," he whispered so softly I had to lean in to hear. "Don't let us go back to the house. Please believe me." I stood there, confused, thinking he was just afraid of being in the house without his mother. "Don't worry, my love. We'll be fine, just the two of us for a few days." He shook his head vigorously, gripping my wrist even harder. "No, Grandma. Don't go back to the house," he repeated, his voice cracking. "This morning I heard Mama on the phone in the home office. She was talking about us," heart pounded. "What did you hear, Devon?" He swallowed, his lips trembling slightly, and leaned in close to my ear. "Mama said after we fell asleep that everything was ready. She said, 'Make sure there are no mistakes. The gas has to look like an accidental leak.'" My blood froze. I stood paralyzed, staring into those innocent eyes that now carried the weight of a terrible secret. "Please, Grandma," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Believe me this time." That last sentence hit me like a slap. I remembered all the other times Devon had tried to warn me. When he said he'd seen his mother hiding papers in the office, when he mentioned she'd been up all night messing with the kitchen pipes, I had always brushed it off as imagination, stories from a lonely child. My hands began to tremble. I didn't want to believe it. It seemed impossible that Candace, my own daughter, could be planning to kill us, but the terror in Devon's eyes was too real. "Okay, baby," I whispered, stroking his pale cheek. "I believe you. We're not going home tonight." The relief in his eyes was instant and deep, washing away any lingering doubt I still had. He knew. Somehow this 7-year-old boy had uncovered a horrific plan. I stood up on shaky legs, my mind racing. If what Devon said was true, we couldn't just go to a hotel or a friend's house. Candace could trace my credit card or call everyone we knew. I got into the car with Devon, helped him buckle his seatbelt, and sat behind the wheel. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. "Where are we going, Grandma?" Devon asked, his small voice breaking the silence. "I don't know yet," I admitted, glancing at his worried little face in the rearview mirror and trying to sound steady. "We're going somewhere safe, sweetie. I just need to think." I started the engine and slowly backed out of the parking spot. We needed time. We needed a plan. And most of all, we needed to understand why my own daughter wanted us dead. I drove for almost an hour with no destination, just getting farther away from home. Devon eventually fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted. I looked at him in the mirror. His peaceful face a sharp contrast to the terror he'd shown earlier in the parking garage. How could a child so small bear such a heavy secret? As I drove through the increasingly empty city streets, my mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Candace had changed over the past few months. More distant, more impatient, always locked in the home office, making calls in hushed tones. I had assumed it was grief, work stress, and the pressures of being a single mother. But now, recalling every detail, every strange look, every interrupted conversation when I walked into the room, a sinister pattern began to emerge. I stopped at a 24-hour gas station on the outskirts of the city. We needed a plan, and I needed to think clearly. I bought a weak cup of coffee from the convenience store and returned to the car, watching Devon sleep peacefully. Then my cell phone vibrated in my coat pocket. Candace's name lit up the screen. My heart leapt. Her flight should have taken off hours ago. Why was she calling? With trembling hands, I answered. "Hello? Hey, Mama," Candace said, her voice unnervingly calm. "Where are you? You should have been home an hour ago." A shiver ran down my spine. How did she know we weren't home? "Oh, we decided to stop for dinner," I lied, keeping my voice steady. Devon was hungry. There was silence on the other end. "I see. And where are you having dinner?" "At that restaurant near the shopping center," I replied vaguely. "Shouldn't you be on the plane?" she asked quickly. "There was a problem with the flight," I said, trying to sound casual. "It was rescheduled for early tomorrow. I'm heading back home now." I froze. That made no sense. Candace always checked flight schedules meticulously. She would never let an unexpected change happen. "Oh, what a shame," I replied, forcing a natural tone. "Well, we'll see you at home later then." "Yes, of course," she said, her voice suddenly sweet. "Don't worry about rushing. Enjoy your dinner. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." I hung up and stared at the phone. It was a trap. She was checking to see if we had figured anything out. Maybe she had cameras in the house. Maybe she'd realized Devon overheard her that morning. Devon stirred in the back seat, slowly opening his eyes. "Was that Mama?" he asked, his tone sharp and knowing. Far too mature for his age. I nodded, unable to hide the truth from those perceptive eyes. "She said the flight was canceled. She's coming back home." Devon's eyes widened in terror. "She knows, Grandma. She knows we found out." I took a deep breath, trying to control the shaking in my hands. "Devon, I need you to tell me exactly what you heard this morning. Everything. Every single detail." He sat up straighter, smoothing his wrinkled t-shirt. He looked older than 7, wiser, frightened, and determined. "Mama woke up really early," he began. "I heard her in the hallway and thought she was making breakfast, but she went to the office and closed the door." He hesitated, lowering his eyes. "I know I shouldn't have, but I went over and listened behind the door." "It's okay, sweetie. Keep going." She was talking really low, but I managed to hear. She said, "Yes, they'll be alone. 3 days is enough time for it to look like an accident. The gas leak during the night while they sleep. Nobody will suspect." Devon paused, took a shaky breath, and continued. Then she said something about papers and insurance money. She said, "Once they're out of the way, I can finally access everything." A chill swept through me. Insurance papers. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. 6 months earlier, my late son-in-law Reggie had left documents for a substantial life insurance policy. Candace knew I was the primary beneficiary, with clauses that reserved a large portion for Devon, money he could only access when he turned 21. Candace was the fund administrator, but she couldn't touch a cent, not while I was alive. And then there was the house, the home that had belonged to Reggie and me, and after his death, passed entirely to me. Candace lived with us, but the property was mine, a house steadily increasing in value as the neighborhood grew. "Devon," I asked, my voice trembling, "have you ever heard your mother talk about money or Grandpa's insurance before?" He nodded slowly. "Lots of times. She always gets really angry when she talks about it. Once she said on the phone that she was stuck because of us." Each word cut through me like a knife. My own daughter, plotting to kill us for money. The thought was unbearable, absurd, monstrous. And yet the pieces fit too perfectly. Her sudden mood swings, her obsession with finances, the constant questions about my will, the mysterious business trips that appeared out of nowhere, and now this fake canceled flight. She wanted to catch us off guard, to make sure we'd be home asleep when the accident happened. "What are we going to do, Grandma?" Devon asked, his small voice pulling me back to the present. I looked at this extraordinary child, so brave, so aware, and realized he had saved both our lives with his courage and sharp instincts. "First, we're going to get even farther away," I said, starting the car again. "And then we're going to get evidence." "Evidence?" he repeated, confused. "Yes, sweetie. Proof that your mother is planning something terrible. Something we can show the police." Devon nodded solemnly. It wasn't a conversation a grandmother should ever have with her grandson, nor a burden a child should carry. But we were in this together now, just the two of us, against someone I never imagined I'd fear. As I drove through the dark, empty roads, a plan began to form in my mind. Risky, yes, but it might give us the proof we needed. "Devon," I said, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. "Do you remember Mr. Harrison, the doorman at our old apartment building?" I asked. Devon nodded. "Wallace Harrison was an old friend, a discreet and reliable man who had worked for decades in the building where we had lived before moving into the house." "I think we need to pay him a visit," I said, steering toward the old neighborhood. It was a risky move, but at that moment we had few options. We needed a safe place for the night, and more importantly, we needed someone we could trust to help expose Candace before she tried anything again. When we finally reached the old building, my heart pounded as I parked on the parallel street, away from the security cameras. If Candace was truly looking for us, we couldn't leave any traces. "Stay here for just a minute, Devon," I said, turning off the engine. "Grandma is going to check if Mr. Harrison is on the night shift." I got out of the car and walked quickly to the security booth, staying in the shadows. The booth was lit, and to my relief, Wallace Harrison was there, his wrinkled face bent over a crossword magazine. I tapped lightly on the glass. He looked up, confused at first, then surprised when he recognized me. "Mara." he said, standing up and opening the booth door. "What are you doing here at this hour?" "Wallace, forgive me for showing up like this," I whispered, glancing nervously around. "But I have a serious problem. I need your help." The small staff apartment in the back of the building was simple but cozy. Wallace had lived there since his wife passed away 10 years ago. It was a discreet space with a separate entrance, invisible to anyone unfamiliar with the building. Perfect for what we needed, a temporary hiding place. Devon sat at the small kitchen table, sipping the hot chocolate Wallace had made. The old doorman watched us with concern, still processing the unbelievable story I had just told him. "Mara," Wallace finally said, his grave voice breaking the silence. "Are you sure about this? It's a very serious accusation against your own daughter." I sighed deeply. "I know, Wallace. It sounds like madness. I don't want to believe it myself." I looked at Devon, who kept his eyes fixed on his cup. But I can't ignore what he heard. And there are other signs I'm only now starting to connect. Wallace nodded slowly, rubbing his wrinkled chin. He had known our family for decades. He'd watched Candace grow up, and he had wept at my husband's funeral. "What do you plan to do, Ms. Allah?" he asked quietly. "We need proof," I said, my mind still turning over the plan that had started forming in the car. "If we go to the police now with just the testimony of a 7-year-old and my suspicions, they won't take us seriously. Candace is respected. She has a solid career. They'll say it's just a misunderstanding or worse, that I'm becoming senile." Wallace frowned but didn't argue. He knew I was right. "And where do I fit into this story?" Wallace asked. "I need to go back to the house," I said, feeling Devon tense beside me. "Not to stay, just to look for evidence. I need to know exactly what Candace was planning, and I need Devon to stay here safely while I do that." "No, Grandma," Devon exclaimed, setting his mug down with a sharp thud. "It's dangerous. Mama might come back." I took his cold little hands in mine. "I know, sweetie, but I'll be careful. I'm just going to take a quick look in her office. See if I can find any clues. I'll be in and out before she realizes." Devon shook his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "I don't want you to go. I don't want to stay alone." "You won't be alone," I reassured him gently. "Mr. Harrison will stay with you, and I promise I'll be back soon." "You shouldn't go alone," Wallace said, concern etched across his face. "If what you're saying is true, it's too risky." "I don't have a choice," I replied. "If Candace realizes we know something, she could destroy the evidence. Or worse, try something more direct." I shuddered at the thought. I have to act now, while she still thinks we suspect nothing. Wallace sighed and ran a hand through his gray hair. "At least let me drive you there. I'll wait on the corner. If you're not out in 20 minutes, I'm calling the police." I nodded. It was better than going completely alone. "I want to go too," Devon insisted. "No, sweetie," I said firmly. "It's too dangerous. I need you to stay here where it's safe. I promise I'll be back." After more pleading, Devon finally relented, but not before hugging me so tightly it nearly took my breath away. "Promise you'll be careful, Grandma," he whispered. "I promise," I said, kissing his forehead. Wallace handed me an old burner phone, the kind without registration, so we could communicate without using my regular one, which Candace might be tracking. We agreed on a simple code. 1 ring and hang up meant I was safe. 2 rings meant trouble. After making sure Devon was settled on the small sofa bed in the apartment, with strict instructions to lock the door and not open it for anyone but us, Wallace and I left, both heavy-hearted about what I was about to do. The dashboard clock read 1:20 a.m. when we stopped a block away from my house. The streets were empty, the silence broken only by the faint hum of streetlights casting long shadows across the asphalt. "I have a bad feeling about this, Ms. Zara," Wallace murmured, turning off the engine. "Are you sure you want to go? I swallowed hard, staring at the dark outline of my house at the end of the street. All the windows were dark. Candace's car wasn't in the driveway. I don't have a choice, I said quietly, more to convince myself than him. 20 minutes, just like we agreed. If I don't come back or call, contact the police. Wallace nodded solemnly. God protect you. I got out of the car and moved quickly down the sidewalk, keeping to the shadows. My heart pounded so violently, I was sure it could be heard from yards away. The house was silent when I slipped in through the back door with my key. I closed it softly behind me and stood in the dark kitchen, straining to hear any sound. There was nothing but the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick-tock of the living room clock. I took out the small flashlight I had brought and lit the path to the hallway. I needed to reach Candace's office on the second floor without making a sound. Every floorboard that creaked under my feet seemed like thunder in the house's silence. At the foot of the stairs, I froze. A strange smell floated in the air, sweet and chemical at once. I sniffed again, trying to identify it. It wasn't gas. It was something different, something that shouldn't be there. Climbing the stairs felt endless. Each step was carefully chosen to avoid the usual creaks. In the second-floor hallway, I stopped in front of Candace's office door. It was locked as I expected. I took out the hairpin I had prepared years ago when Candace was a teenager and locked her door during tantrums. I'd learned to pick simple locks like this one. I never imagined I'd use that skill in a situation like this. After a few tense minutes, I heard the satisfying click of the lock giving way. I pushed the door open slowly, praying the hinges wouldn't squeak. Candace's office was immaculately organized, as always. Shelves lined with books on management and marketing, a dark wood desk with a closed laptop, a leather swivel chair. Nothing out of place. I closed the door behind me and began my search. The laptop was password protected, so I focused on physical documents. I carefully opened drawers, flipped through folders, and checked every corner for anything suspicious. It was in the third desk drawer that I found something. A red folder, unlike the others, hidden beneath a stack of company documents. Inside were bank statements I'd never seen before, accounts under unfamiliar names, large transfers to someone called M. Sellers, and most alarming of all, a copy of my life insurance policy with handwritten notes in the margins. Figures, payout clauses, dates. My heart pounded. It was real. Everything Devon had heard was true. My own daughter was plotting. A sound from downstairs cut through my thoughts. The unmistakable creak of the front door opening. I froze, blood turning to ice. Candace was back. Quickly, I grabbed my phone and dialed Wallace's number. 2 rings. Then I hung up. The signal for trouble. I snapped photos of the most incriminating documents as fast as I could. There was no time to go through everything, but I needed evidence. Then I replaced the folder exactly as I'd found it and slipped behind the office door, turning off the flashlight. Footsteps echoed up the stairs, slow, deliberate, but they didn't sound like Candace's firm, hurried stride. The steps grew more cautious. Adrenaline surged through my veins. I was trapped. If I left the office, I'd be seen. If I stayed, I'd be found when Candace came to work in the morning. Or worse, if she decided to come in now. The footsteps stopped in the hallway. I could hear breathing on the other side of the door. A shadow moved under the narrow crack, blotting out the faint light from the corridor. Someone was standing there, listening. I held my breath, cold sweat sliding down my back. The doorknob began to turn slowly. The door creaked open just a few inches. I pressed myself flat against the wall behind it, barely daring to breathe. The darkness was my only ally. A silhouette stretched across the floor. Not Candace. The figure was taller, broader. A man. He stood still for several seconds, listening. Then, from downstairs, I heard Candace's voice, distant but distinct. "Marcus, is everything clear up there?" My heart seized. Marcus. The same name from the bank statements. M. Sellers. "Just checking." A deep male voice answered only a few feet away. The house is empty. No sign of them. "I told you something was wrong," Candace snapped, her voice rising as she came closer. "They should be here." The plan was for tomorrow night, after I got back from the trip. Now the timeline's all messed up. Her footsteps were on the stairs now. I was trapped between them. The daughter who wanted me dead, and the man helping her do it. My only escape was the office window, a narrow ledge over the backyard, a dangerous drop for anyone, deadly for a 70-year-old woman. I said involving the kid was risky. The man muttered, his voice fading slightly as he moved toward the hallway. "Kids are unpredictable." He might have heard something. "Impossible," Candace replied sharply from the hallway. "Devon never wakes up before 7, and I always talk in the office with the door closed. Besides, even if he did hear, who would believe a 7-year-old? A dull thump echoed from downstairs, followed by a muffled curse. "What was that?" Candace asked, her tone suddenly tense. "I don't know," Marcus answered. "I'll check. You keep getting her room ready." His footsteps retreated quickly down the stairs. Candace lingered for a few moments, then her steps turned toward my bedroom at the end of the hall. My mind raced. Her room, getting my room ready. What were they doing? And that noise? Could it be Wallace? He must have come into the house after I sent the trouble signal. My old friend was in danger because of me. I slipped out from behind the door, moving slowly, careful not to make a sound. Through the crack, I saw the hallway was empty. On tiptoe, I made my way to the window. I needed to get out now and call the police. My life, Wallace's, and most of all, Devon's, depended on it. I opened the window as quietly as possible. The ledge was narrower than I'd remembered, barely a foot wide. Below lay a 20-foot drop to the grass. In any other circumstance, I wouldn't have dared. But desperation leaves no room for reason. I swung one leg over the sill, feeling the sharp bite of cold air. Forcing down my fear, I pulled the other leg through and steadied myself on the ledge. My joints screamed in protest, arthritis reminding me of my years. But terror lent me strength I didn't know I had. Then, voices downstairs. Raised, angry, a heavy thud, followed by a groan. My blood ran cold as I recognized Wallace's voice. They'd caught him. "Who else is with you, old man?" Marcus's rough voice thundered through the house. "How did you know to come in here?" I couldn't hear Wallace's reply, but the crash that followed made me shudder. I closed my eyes for a moment, silently begging my old friend's forgiveness. I couldn't help him now. Our only chance was for me to escape and find help. Moving sideways along the ledge, inch by inch, I pressed my back against the wall and clutched the rough surface for balance. Sweat ran down my face despite the cold night air. At the corner of the house, I spotted a lattice covered in ivy. If I can reach it, I thought, I might be able to climb down to the garden. Risky, but safer than jumping. "Candace, I found someone," Marcus's voice bellowed from inside. "An old guy trying to sneak in the back way." "What? Who is he?" My daughter called from my room, her voice muffled by distance. "He won't talk, but he seems to know your mother. She must be nearby." I froze. They knew I was still in the house. The search would only intensify. There was no time left for caution. Adrenaline surged through me. I reached the lattice and began to climb down, ignoring the pain in my joints and the scratches from the wooden slats. I half slipped, half climbed the last few feet, landing awkwardly on the grass. Pain shot through my left hip, but there was no time to dwell on it. I forced myself upright and ran as quietly as I could across the backyard toward the low wall separating our property from the miller's next door. As I moved through the shadows of the trees, the office window flew open behind me. A beam of light swept across the yard, nearly catching me. I ducked behind a bush, holding my breath. "Is anyone down there?" Marcus's voice roared through the night. "I'm going to check. Keep the old man tied up." I scrambled over the wall with effort, tumbling into the miller's yard. They were elderly and thankfully away on a trip. I dashed across their lawn, skirting the house, each step sending a sharp twinge through my hip. By the time I reached the parallel street, I was gasping for breath. But fear kept me going. I ran as far from the house as I could, staying within the shadows until I reached a main avenue, where a few bars were still open, and people lingered on the sidewalk. With trembling hands, I pulled out the burner phone and dialed 911. As I waited for an answer, I checked the photos I'd taken of the documents in the office. The proof we needed was there. "Police, what is your emergency?" came a calm voice on the line. "My name is Alabinum," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I need to report an attempted murder. My daughter is plotting to kill me and my grandson for insurance money. She has an accomplice, and they've captured a friend who tried to help me." There was a brief silence. I could almost hear the skepticism in the operator's pause. Another old woman rambling about conspiracies. "Ma'am, where are you right now?" he asked, his tone professional but cautious. "On the I-85 service road near the 500 block," I replied quickly. "I'm running from my house. Please, send patrols to 237 Magnolia Lane. My friend, Wallace Harrison, is in mortal danger." "Do you have any proof of these accusations?" "I have photographed documents and a witness. My 7-year-old grandson, who overheard my daughter planning everything," I said. Then softer, "I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Please, there's no time to lose." As I spoke, a patrol car rolled slowly down the avenue. I waved frantically, still holding the phone to my ear. To my immense relief, the car stopped. 2 officers stepped out, approaching carefully. "The police are here," I told the operator. "I'm going to explain the situation to them." The next few minutes were a blur. I hurriedly explained everything to the officers, showing them the photos on my phone, the documents, the account numbers, the signatures. I told them about Devon, safe at Wallace's apartment, and about Wallace himself, likely injured and being held hostage. Something in my urgency, or maybe the strength of the evidence, convinced them. One officer radioed for backup, while the other helped me into the patrol car. "We'll rescue your friend first," said the older officer, his face lined with years of experience and quiet resolve. "Then we'll find your grandson," the officer said. "Can you give us the exact address where he is?" I quickly provided the address of the old building and directions to the staff apartment. My fear now was that Candace and her accomplice, realizing I had escaped, might figure out where Devon was. Would she remember Wallace and our long friendship? The patrol car sped through the nearly deserted streets, 2 other units following close behind. Their sirens were silent, but red and blue lights flashed across the night. My heart pounded as we neared my house. "There's a back entry through the kitchen door," I told the officer. "Wallace must be downstairs." We stopped at a safe distance. The police asked me to remain in the car while they surrounded the property. I watched anxiously as they moved into position, communicating quietly over their radios. It felt like an eternity, though only minutes passed. Then chaos, shouts of "freeze" echoed through the night, followed by the crash of breaking glass. A door slammed, heavy footsteps thundered inside. Then silence. Moments later, I saw Wallace being helped out by 2 officers. He was limping, a cut visible on his forehead, but he was alive. Relief flooded through me, tears blurring my vision. Marcus emerged next, handcuffed, his muscular arms covered in tattoos, his face twisted in fury. But Candace never appeared. The older officer approached my car. "The house is clear, ma'am, but your daughter isn't here. She fled out the back before we arrived." A chill ran down my spine. "Devon," I whispered. "We have to get to my grandson before she does." The patrol car tore through the streets, siren wailing this time. I sat in the back seat, hands trembling with anxiety. Wallace sat beside me, a makeshift bandage on his head, looking pale but determined. "She didn't know where we were," he said, trying to reassure me. "I never mentioned the apartment when they caught me." But I couldn't be comforted. A dark certainty pressed on my chest. Candace was clever. She knew my routines, my friends, my hiding places. If she remembered Wallace, she might already know where to look. When we reached the old building, my heart almost stopped. The service door to the staff apartment was ajar. "Stay here," the officer ordered, drawing his weapon. But I couldn't. I jumped out of the patrol car and followed him, ignoring his protests. Wallace came after me, limping but determined. The hallway inside was dark and silent. The apartment door stood closed. Untouched, the officer knocked 3 times. "Devon!" I called, my voice trembling. "Devon, sweetie, it's Grandma. Are you there?" Silence. A silence that pierced my ears like needles. The officer tried the handle. Locked. He stepped back, then lunged with his shoulder, smashing the door down with a crash. The apartment was dark. He entered first, flashlight cutting through the shadows, followed by Wallace and me. The beam swept across the small space. The kitchen was empty. The living room, where the sofa bed lay, was messy. "Devon!" I called again, panic rising in my throat. Then I saw it. A torn piece of paper caught under an empty cup on the sofa bed. I picked it up with trembling hands and read the hurried handwriting. "Mama found me. She said she needs to protect me from you. That you're crazy and making up story. I'm scared, Grandma. Help!" My knees gave out. Wallace caught me before I hit the floor. She took him. I murmured, stunned. Candace had taken Devon. The officer immediately radioed in the kidnapping. Within minutes, an operation was underway. Descriptions of Candace, her car, and Devon. Roadblocks on city exits. Alerts on highways and at the airport. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. Candace was meticulous. She had been planning this for months. Escape routes, perhaps fake documents. And she knew Devon better than anyone. Exactly what to say to make him cooperate, even if only temporarily. Wallace and I were taken to the precinct to give detailed statements. I showed the photos of the documents, recounted everything Devon had overheard, and explained the life insurance and Candace's growing greed. The sergeant, a middle-aged man with deep bags under his eyes, listened intently. Contrary to my fears, he didn't dismiss me as a confused old woman. The evidence was too strong, especially after the accomplice had been caught. Marcus's statement began to corroborate my story. "He's cooperating to reduce his sentence," the sergeant explained. "He confirmed that your daughter hired him to simulate a gas leak that would kill you and your grandson in your sleep. He was to be paid with a portion of the insurance money." I felt nauseous hearing the confirmation of that macabre plan. "And what about Devon?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Do you have any leads yet?" The sergeant hesitated. "Not yet, but we're monitoring all routes out of the city. Your daughter won't get far." But I wasn't so sure. The hours dragged on, each minute without news deepening my anguish. Sitting in the precinct waiting room, a cold cup of tea untouched before me, I felt myself aging years in moments. Wallace sat beside me, silent, occasionally squeezing my hand in quiet support. His face showed worry but also determination. "We'll find him, Miss Zara," he said after a long silence. "Devon's a smart kid. He'll find a way to leave us clues." I nodded, clinging to that fragile hope. Devon truly was remarkable. His quick thinking had already saved us once. Maybe it could save him again. Then it hit me. Something I'd overlooked. Something Devon had mentioned days ago. A memory surfaced, sharp and clear. "Wait," I said, sitting up straight. "I think I know where she might have taken him." Wallace and a nearby officer turned toward me, alert. 2 weeks ago, Devon told me Candace took him to see a surprise house. Somewhere in the country, a few hours from the city. He said there were animals and a lake. I thought it was just a day trip at the time. The sergeant was called immediately. I explained my suspicion. Candace might be preparing this place as a safe house, somewhere to run after the accident that was supposed to kill us. "Do you know where this property is located?" the sergeant asked. "Not exactly," I admitted. Devon mentioned it was near a small town. I think the name was something like Willow Creek or Cedar Ridge, something like that. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Investigators began searching property, records for anything recently purchased or rented under Candace's name, or aliases, in towns matching those descriptions within a few hours' drive from the city. Then came another blow. Candace's car had been found abandoned at a gas station along the westbound highway. She'd likely switched vehicles. The search had just become far more complicated. The clock on the precinct wall read 5:30 a.m. Outside, the first gray light of dawn was breaking. I hadn't slept in almost 24 hours, but adrenaline and fear kept me from even blinking. That's when my phone, returned after forensics examined the photos, began to vibrate. The screen showed an unknown number. I answered, my heart hammering. "Hello, Grandma." Devon's small, frightened voice made my chest tighten. "Devon, sweetie, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm okay," he whispered. "Mama's sleeping right now. I found her phone and hid it to call you." "You are so brave, my love," I said softly, forcing my voice to stay calm while signaling frantically to the sergeant. He immediately called for a technician to trace the call. "Can you tell me where you are?" "It's a house in the country. There's a lake and lots of trees. We came by car, but it was a long drive. I fell asleep, and when I woke up, we were already here." "Do you see any sign? Any name nearby?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. "I can't look out the window right now. Mama might wake up." His voice trembled. "She's different, Grandma. She says weird things. She says you want to hurt us." "Don't believe her, sweetheart," I whispered. "I'm doing everything I can to find you." There was a silence, then the faint sound of movement on the other end. When Devon spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "There's a mailbox at the entrance. It says Riverwood Ranch, Highway 142. My heart pounded. That was the clue we needed. "Devon, you are amazing," I whispered. "Now listen closely. Find a safe place to hide. The police are on their way, but it might take a little while. You need to stay away from your mother. Do you understand?" "I understand," he replied. "There's an old barn behind the house. I'm going to hide there. That's it, sweetie. And Devon," I hesitated, my throat tightening. "I love you so, so much. Everything is going to be all right." "I love you too, Grandma," he whispered. Then, in an even quieter tone, "She's moving. I have to hang up." The call dropped. I jumped to my feet, relaying the information to the sergeant. Within minutes, an operation was organized. The state highway heading west had several ranches and properties near Highway 142. But a place called Riverwood Ranch was easy to locate. "You must stay here," the sergeant said as the officers prepared. "We'll go get your grandson and arrest your daughter." But I couldn't just wait. Devon was alone, facing the terror of realizing that his own mother could harm him and me. He needed to see a familiar face when he was rescued. "I'm coming with you," I said firmly, leaving no room for discussion. "I can wait in the patrol car, far from the danger. But I need to be there for Devon." After some resistance, the sergeant agreed, on the condition that I remain at a safe distance until the situation was controlled. Wallace insisted on accompanying me despite his injuries. I promised the boy I'd protect him, and that promise was all that mattered. And so, at the first light of dawn, we set off westward in a caravan of patrol cars. The sun was rising on the horizon, painting the sky with pink and golden hues that cruelly contrasted with the darkness in my heart. During the journey, I couldn't stop thinking about what had driven Candace to this point. My sweet girl, whom I had cradled in my arms, watched take her first steps and say her first words. How had she transformed into someone capable of coldly plotting the death of her own mother and her own son? Money was certainly part of the answer. But there was something else, a coldness, a disconnection that I had watched grow over the years. Perhaps it began after my son-in-law's death, or perhaps the signs had been there much earlier, and I, blinded by a mother's love, refused to see them. These bitter reflections accompanied me as the urban landscape gradually gave way to fields and small rural properties. When we finally reached Highway 142, my heart was in my throat. A discreet sign indicated the entrance to Riverwood Ranch, a dirt road winding through trees until it disappeared around a bend. The police stopped the patrol cars before the entrance to avoid alerting Candace. From there on, they would proceed on foot, surrounding the property. "Wait here, Miss Ilara," the sergeant said in a firm but kind tone. "I promise we'll bring your grandson back safely." I nodded, resigned. Wallace held my hand as we watched the officers move away in tactical formation, disappearing among the trees. The minutes that followed were the longest of my life. Sitting in the patrol car, I strained to see beyond the trees. The police radio crackled occasionally with coded communications I couldn't understand. Then, distant shouts, agitated voices, and the unmistakable sound of a gunshot shattered the morning calm, echoing like thunder and making my heart stop. Without thinking, I flung open the patrol car door and started running down the dirt road, ignoring Wallace's shouts behind me. "Miss Ara, come back," he cried. But I couldn't wait. Devon was in there. My grandson, my light, the only person who truly mattered. I ran as I hadn't run in decades, ignoring the pain in my injured hip and my gasping breath. Age seemed to vanish, replaced by the raw adrenaline of fear. Wallace limped behind me, struggling to keep up, but determined to be by my side. Rounding the bend in the road, I finally saw the house. A simple 2-story structure with a wooden porch. About 100 yards behind it stood the old barn Devon had described. Police officers were positioned strategically around the property, weapons drawn. Movement on the porch caught my eye, and my blood ran cold. There was Candace, pale, disheveled, almost unrecognizable in the fury that contorted her face. In one hand gleamed a gun under the morning sun. In the other she held Devon, using him as a human shield. "Nobody, come closer," she screamed, her voice cutting through the morning air. "Or I swear I'll shoot!" The sergeant, partially protected by a tree a few yards from the porch, called out calmly but firmly. "Miss Candace, drop the weapon and let the boy go. The house is surrounded. There is no way out. You don't understand," Candace shrieked, her voice cracking. "She stole everything from me. My father left that money for me, not for her. She never let me touch anything. Always controlling, always dictating how I should live." I stood frozen behind the patrol car further up the road, her words stabbing me. This is how she saw me. As a controller who had deprived her of what she believed was rightfully hers. Devon, though pale and terrified, was strangely composed. His eyes scanned the surroundings, clearly searching for an escape or signaling a plan. Even in that extreme situation, my grandson displayed the presence of mind that had saved us before. "Your father left the money for all of us," the sergeant said, buying time. "I'm sure we can resolve this without anyone getting hurt." "Lie," Candace spat back, tightening her hold on Devon. "She manipulated the will. She always manipulated everything, and now she's making me look crazy, making up stories that I want to kill her." Wallace finally reached me, gasping. He grabbed my arm to stop me from moving forward. "Don't expose yourself," he whispered. "The police know what they're doing." But I couldn't stand still. Candace's instability was frightening, her eyes wide and wild, the hand holding the gun trembling slightly. Then I noticed Devon, looking toward the barn behind the house. His gaze darted back and forth, a silent communication. I followed his eyes and saw an officer quietly positioning himself behind the barn, preparing to flank the house. I realized what Devon was doing. Even in that terrifying moment, my 7-year-old grandson was cooperating with the police, consciously keeping his mother's attention on the front of the house while they maneuvered behind. His courage and intelligence left me utterly speechless. "Candace!" I called, taking a step forward, ignoring Wallace's desperate grip on my arm. She turned sharply, gun aimed at me, eyes wide with fury. "You!" she hissed. "How did you escape?" You should be dead in the fire." "There was no fire, Candace," I replied calmly, stepping closer. The police tensed but held back, understanding I was buying time. "Your plan failed because Devin overheard everything. He saved our lives." Candace's face twisted in rage and disbelief. She looked at Devin, who met her gaze without blinking. "You," she whispered to him. "You betrayed me?" "He didn't betray anyone," I said, advancing slowly. "He just protected the people he loves, just as I've always tried to protect you." She laughed, a jarring, almost hysterical sound. "You suffocated me, always controlling my life, my money, my dreams. When Dad died, that money should have been mine." "The money was never the problem, Candace," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Your father wanted you to live on your own merits, not dependent on an inheritance. He loved you. I love you." "Lie!" she screamed, her hand shaking as it held the gun. "If you loved me, you would have given me what was rightfully mine." I realized then that nothing I could say would reach her. Greed and resentment had corroded her mind over years, perhaps decades, turning her into someone I barely recognized. "Let Devin go," I pleaded, now only a few feet from the porch. "He has nothing to do with this. It's between you and me." For a brief moment I saw hesitation, perhaps guilt, flash across her face, and in that instant Devin acted. With a sudden, decisive move, he bit the arm that held him and lunged sideways, rolling off the porch. Candace screamed in pain. The gun fired wildly into the air. Police officers advanced from every direction. I ran the last few feet to the porch, ignoring their shouts, and reached Devin as he huddled next to the railing, trembling. At the same moment, officers tackled Candace, forcing her to the ground and handcuffing her. She screamed and struggled, unrecognizable in her fury. I hugged Devin with all the strength I had left, holding him tightly as his small body trembled against mine. "You're alive. You're safe," I whispered. "Grandma," he breathed, clinging to me. "I will always come, my love," I replied, tears finally streaming freely. "Always." Over Devin's shoulder, I met Candace's eyes as she was led away by the officers. A mixture of rage and disbelief etched across her face. For a moment, mother and daughter looked at each other across the insurmountable chasm that now separated us. There was no longer rage in her eyes, only a desolate emptiness. The woman I had known, my daughter, was gone, leaving behind only a hollow shell of who she once was. Then she was led away to the patrol car, and I turned all my attention to Devin, the miracle of having him safe in my arms. The sun now shone high in the sky, illuminating my grandson's tear-streaked face. I ran my hand through his hair, amazed by his courage. "How did you know she was planning that?" I asked softly as we sat inside the ambulance that had arrived to check us. "How did you figure it out?" Devin bit his lower lip, thoughtful. "I always wake up early, Grandma. Mama thinks I sleep in, but I just stay still in bed thinking." I smiled, stroking his cheek. So observant, so quietly attentive to everything. "That morning I heard her on the phone," he continued. "She was talking differently, angry, but trying not to sound like it. I went to the hallway and listened by the office door." The paramedic finished checking Devin's vitals and stepped away to talk to the police, giving us privacy. "She talked about gas and about us sleeping," Devin said, lowering his voice. "She said she wanted Grandpa's money, that she was tired of waiting, and that it would look like an accident." He looked up at me, his eyes far older than his years. I knew no one would believe me if I told them. Adults never believe kids when it's something important. That sentence broke my heart. How many times had he tried to warn me before, in small ways I dismissed as childish imagination? "But I believed you at the airport," I whispered. A small smile appeared on his face. "Yes, you believed me when it mattered." I pulled him into my arms again, overwhelmed with gratitude for this extraordinary child whose courage and insight had saved both our lives. "Candace," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. Her eyes met mine, tired and unfocused at first, but slowly they sharpened with recognition. The fire and rage that had consumed her yesterday were gone, replaced by a hollow exhaustion that made her seem smaller, fragile even. For a moment I saw the little girl I had once held, cradled and loved, before the years and choices had hardened her. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the car engine. I took a steadying breath, trying to keep my own emotions in check. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just need you to understand that Devin is safe. He's okay, and I forgive you, even if it's hard to imagine." She looked away, blinking rapidly, as if the words were too heavy to bear. I didn't mean, it wasn't supposed to." Shaking my head gently, I interrupted. I know it wasn't simple, but it ended now, Candace. It's over. You'll face the consequences, but Devin and we're alive because of courage, love, and quick thinking. Remember that?" Her eyes welled with tears, a mixture of despair and something like regret flickering in them. For the first time since that terrible night began, there was no threat, no plotting. Just a human being confronting the aftermath of choices she could never take back. I reached the car window and rested a hand lightly on hers, careful of the cuffs. "You were my daughter, Candace, and in some part of you that daughter still exists. I hope someday you find the part of yourself that can come back." She didn't speak. She only nodded slightly, her gaze dropping to her lap. I knew the journey ahead for her would be long, but for now, I had to return to Devin. With one last look, I stepped back, letting the officer gently close the car door. Outside, the sun shone brighter now, and I felt a quiet relief wash over me. Devin was safe. Wallace was safe. And though the wounds of the night would linger, the nightmare had ended. "Do you realize what you did? What you almost did?" My voice trembled with contained emotion. Candace's shoulders sagged, her face tightening as if the weight of her own words had finally crushed her. "I thought I could control it," she whispered. "Marcus said it would be quick, that no one would suffer, that afterward everything would finally be easy again." "Easy?" I repeated, my voice breaking. "You were ready to sacrifice your own son for that kind of ease?" Tears streamed down her cheeks now, silent but relentless. I didn't think it through. I kept telling myself it was just talk, that I'd stop it before it happened. But then everything went too far, and Her words dissolved into sobs. I stood there, my heart aching with a grief that went deeper than anger. "You had choices, Candace. You always did. You could have asked for help. You could have told me. But instead, you let greed and fear twist everything you were." She covered her face with her cuffed hands, her voice muffled. I know, Mama. And now I've lost everything. Him, you, everything." I took a long, steady breath, trying to find strength in the wreckage of what remained. "No, Candace, you didn't lose everything. You still have a chance to tell the truth, to face what you've done and let Devin grow up knowing that somewhere inside you, there was still remorse." She lowered her hands, her eyes red and swollen. For a fleeting second, I saw something. Remorse. Maybe even clarity. Before she looked away again. Without another word, I stepped back. The officer quietly closed the car door, and I turned away, feeling the final thread between us snap. There was nothing left to say. Devin is going to carry the weight of what his mother did for the rest of his life. Even with love, support, and therapy, the knowledge that someone so close, his own mother, planned to harm him for money will leave a psychological scar. He may wrestle with trust, guilt, and fear, questions about why love and family can be twisted by greed. But the way you embraced him, reassured him, and acted as his protector provides a counterbalance. He will know that courage, morality, and love exist even in the darkest moments. In the aftermath, the structure you created around him, safety, stability, and emotional support will be crucial. Counseling, consistent routines, and honest, age-appropriate conversations will help him process the trauma. While the memory of betrayal may linger, your presence and affirmation that his mother's actions were her own, not his fault, can shape him into a resilient, compassionate person who learns that even in pain, trust and love can endure. Devin thought for a moment, his small hands gripping the blanket tightly. So, it wasn't our fault? I shook my head, holding him close. Never, my love. It was never your fault. You did everything right. You were brave, smart, and careful. And that's why we're safe now. He nodded slowly, the tension in his body easing just a little. I don't like that Mama hurt us, he murmured. I know, sweetheart, I whispered, stroking his hair. It's okay to feel angry, scared, or sad. Those feelings are normal. What matters is that you're safe, and we'll take care of each other. He pressed his face into my shoulder, letting out a small, shaky sigh. For the first time since the ordeal, I felt a flicker of peace. Though the scars would remain, his extraordinary courage, combined with love and guidance, would help him heal. That night, Devin slept beside me, and I promised silently to protect him, guide him, and help him grow strong despite the darkness he had seen. The road ahead would be long, but in that quiet room, I knew we had survived the storm, and together we would face the calm that followed.